"Hey, stop right there," he shouted, his voice commanding. The officer wasn't just annoyed, he was pissed. His fingers twitched near the radio on his belt, ready to call in backup for an intruder. The van jerked to a halt. A cloud of dust hung in the air. The woman behind the wheel didn't flinch. She didn't even look up. She just shut off the engine and slid out of the driver's seat, wiping a bead of sweat from her brow. Her worn, faded clothes blended in with the van, giving her the appearance of any other civilian contractor on base. Nothing special, nothing to see. But as she bent down to grab her toolbox, the officer's eyes caught something. Her sleeve had risen, revealing a small tattoo, a dagger piercing through 3 stars on her arm. The officer's irritation was quickly replaced by confusion, then disbelief. His eyes narrowed. The tattoo wasn't just any ink, it was a military insignia that shouldn't have been there. But before he could make sense of it, a figure appeared in the distance, moving with the authority of someone who commanded respect. A decorated 3-star general, his uniform impeccable, stepped onto the scene. His eyes locked onto the woman like a hawk spotting its prey. The officer opened his mouth to speak, but the general held up a hand, silencing him. His gaze never wavered from the woman in front of him. "Is that Jessica King?" the general murmured, almost to himself. The officer froze. The world seemed to hold its breath. The general's eyes flickered down to her tattoo, and for the first time, Jessica King, once known as the leader of Delta Echo 9, an elite military unit that was wiped off the map, was about to be recognized. Jessica King had disappeared from the military spotlight years ago, her name erased from official records, her missions classified beyond comprehension. She had chosen a life of quiet service after Delta Echo 9 was disbanded, fading into civilian life, working as a contractor, traveling from base to base, fixing electrical systems and mechanical equipment. But none of her past had ever been forgotten, not by those who knew the truth. At Fort Liberty, she was just another technician, a quiet, efficient woman who never drew attention to herself, to the soldiers around her. She was a shadow, a no-nonsense contractor who always got the job done, but was otherwise invisible. But no one knew what she had done. No one had any idea that the quiet woman they mocked for her weathered van and plain clothes was once the leader of a top-secret unit, one that had undertaken missions too dangerous, too sensitive to be acknowledged by the public. The soldiers poked fun at her appearance, cracking jokes about her worn-out tools and how she must be one of those Delta Force wannabes. They didn't know she had been a part of one of the most dangerous and covert operations in modern military history. As Jessica worked under the hood of a fleet vehicle, adjusting the hydraulic line with the precision of a seasoned professional, her sleeve shifted again. The tattoo, a memorial to the soldiers who had fallen during Operation Dark Horizon, became visible to the group of nearby soldiers. They laughed, dismissing it as nothing more than an outdated piece of body art. One of the soldiers smirked. "Look at that. One of those knockoff tattoos from Delta Force," he scoffed. "Totally fake." But General Robert Hawk, standing a few yards away, was no longer listening to the ridicule. He was staring at the tattoo in shock, his face paling as memories flooded back. He knew that symbol. He had been there. He had been one of the few who knew the full story behind Delta Echo 9. No one else around him understood. The soldiers laughed, oblivious to the significance of what they were seeing, but to General Hawk, this was more than just a tattoo. This was a reminder of the past of Operation Dark Horizon, a mission that had gone terribly wrong, a mission that had cost the lives of several soldiers, including some of the best operators the military had ever known. "That's impossible," the general whispered, more to himself than anyone else. He took a step forward. "Is that Jessica King?" The soldiers looked from him to the woman under the hood of the vehicle. A tense silence fell over the lot. Jessica had spent years running from her past, hiding behind the veil of a civilian contractor. But the tattoo, now visible to all, could no longer be ignored. It was the same design she had worn in memory of those who didn't make it home. The 3 stars, each representing a fallen comrade. The dagger. a symbol of the precise action required to complete a mission under impossible circumstances. The faded scars around it, a testament to the injuries she had sustained during the final firefight. She had carried that tattoo with her for years, not as a mark of glory, but as a memorial, a reminder of what she had lost. The military had erased her from the records, declared her dead to protect the operation's secrecy. But here, in front of these soldiers, her secret was about to be exposed. The veil of anonymity she had so carefully constructed was crumbling. General Hawk walked toward her, his movements slow, deliberate. The young officer who had confronted her earlier stepped aside, confused by the sudden change in atmosphere. The general was no longer the commanding officer who had been overseeing base operations. Now, he was a man who had just discovered a ghost from his past. "Jessica," General Hawk said, his voice tight with emotion. "I thought you were dead. I thought everyone was..." Jessica stood up, her face calm, but the storm inside her was undeniable. She removed her gloves slowly, revealing the full extent of her tattoo to the general. The soldiers who had mocked her earlier were now silent, their eyes wide with shock. "Yes, it's me," Jessica said, her voice steady but filled with years of unspoken pain. General Hawk's voice broke the silence. "This woman saved my life during Operation Dark Horizon. She was the last transmission when everything went dark. She stayed behind, injured and alone, for 72 hours, making sure the evacuation was marked. She was the reason we all got out." The soldiers who had once laughed at her now stood frozen in disbelief. They had no idea. The woman they had ridiculed was a war hero, a living legend who had made the ultimate sacrifice and survived. Jessica's quiet demeanor, her lack of desire for recognition, had always been part of who she was. She wasn't after medals. She wasn't after fame. What she had done, what she had survived, was just part of the job. The others hadn't seen it. They hadn't known what she had done. But now, the truth was out. "3 of my men died during that mission," Jessica said softly, her eyes focused on the ground. "I survived. That's not heroism. That's just how things happened." General Hawk turned to the gathered soldiers, his voice full of respect. "She stayed behind when the rest of us were evacuated. She held off enemy forces for 6 hours. She protected the coordinates, ensuring the mission could continue. When she was finally rescued, she was barely alive." The soldiers, who had once dismissed her as just another contractor, now stood with their heads down in shame. The respect they had for her grew immeasurably in that moment. Later that evening, a blurry photo circulated the base's internal newsletter of Jessica, with her wrench in hand, her faded tattoo visible, and a general saluting her in the background. The caption read, "Not all legends wear medals." The next day, as Jessica left the base to continue her work, a group of new recruits stood at attention. They had finally understood what she had sacrificed, and their respect for her was unspoken but undeniable. Jessica, however, didn't need their recognition. She had never needed it. Jessica King's story would remain largely unknown, not because it didn't matter, but because she had chosen anonymity over fame. Her tattoo, the only visible connection to a past that didn't exist on paper, would forever be a reminder to those who knew the truth. For Jessica, true service wasn't about recognition, it was about quietly serving wherever she was needed, without expectation or fanfare. And though her van, her humble mobile workshop, might have seemed like just another piece of military equipment, to those who understood, it was a moving memorial to a life of service, sacrifice, and a legend that would never truly be forgotten.